When London learned to price the unknown. For centuries, London didn't trade certainty. It traded belief. Money moved not on facts, but on what people feared might happen next. To understand modern finance, we have to understand this moment, because the same instinct still drives markets today. The instinct to measure the unknowable, then sell it as security. London did not become a financial capital by accident. It grew through ports, empires, wars, and risk. Merchants faced storms they could not predict. Kings faced debts they could not repay. Insurers faced losses they could not calculate. At first, risk was personal. A ship sailed, or it didn't return. A loan was honored, or it destroyed a family. There were no formulas, only reputation, memory, and trust. But as London expanded, trust stopped being enough. Trade stretched across oceans. Time stretched across years. Losses became too large to absorb privately. That pressure forced a question no one had answered before. What is uncertainty worth? Not in hindsight, not in stories, but in advance. Slowly, a quiet transformation began. Risk stopped being something endured. It became something measured, then divided, then sold. Coffee houses filled with numbers instead of rumors. Ledgers replaced handshakes. Promises became instruments. And for the first time, uncertainty gained a price. At first, it looked like progress. Predictable costs felt safer than unpredictable disasters. Losses could be spread. Exposure could be limited. Confidence grew. But something subtle changed beneath the surface. Once uncertainty had a price, it became a product. And once it became a product, demand followed. This was the moment London learned to trade the future. Not by knowing what would happen, but by agreeing on what uncertainty should cost. That idea would reshape markets, institutions, and power itself. And it would quietly redefine what risk really meant. Not as danger, but as opportunity, waiting to be packaged. Once uncertainty could be priced, it could be organized. And once it could be organized, it could be scaled. London's markets began to change shape. Risk moved away from individuals and into systems. Loss was no longer a personal failure. It became a statistical outcome. Insurance tables grew thicker. Contracts grew longer. Time itself was broken into intervals that could be priced. Weeks, months, years. At first, this shift felt stabilizing. Merchants slept better, knowing losses were shared. Investors felt protected by pooled exposure. Institutions emerged to stand between danger and ruin. But this new structure created distance. The person taking the risk was no longer the person facing the loss. Responsibility blurred. Accountability softened. As confidence grew, memory faded. Storms that once terrified traders became abstract percentages. Defaults turned into footnotes. Crises became historical anomalies. The market began rewarding those who could ignore fear, not because danger disappeared, but because it felt contained. New instruments multiplied. Each promised precision, each promised control, each promised that uncertainty was finally understood. But the models relied on something fragile. Assumptions. That tomorrow would resemble yesterday. That rare events would remain rare. That behavior would stay rational under pressure. Quietly, incentives shifted. Profit no longer came from avoiding risk. It came from moving it elsewhere, packaging it differently, delaying its consequences. The system encouraged expansion. More contracts, more leverage, more layers between cause and effect. From the outside, London's markets looked disciplined, orderly, mathematical, safe. Inside, something else was forming, a dependence on stability itself, a belief that structure could replace judgment. And beneath every calculation sat a fragile truth. The future had not become predictable. It had simply become negotiable. That belief worked until conditions changed, until assumptions were tested, until uncertainty refused to behave. Because there was one problem no model could solve. The moment everyone believes risk is controlled, they start taking more of it. This is where the system began to turn against itself. As confidence hardened, caution weakened. Safety became an assumption, not a condition. Markets stopped asking what could go wrong. They asked how much more could be extracted. Institutions expanded faster than understanding. Balance sheets grew. Leverage crept upward. Complexity became a shield rather than a tool. The further risk traveled from its origin, the harder it became to recognize. Exposure hid behind layers of contracts. Responsibility dissolved across departments, firms, and markets. Warnings appeared, but they were quiet. Anomalies dismissed as noise. Outliers labeled irrelevant. History treated as outdated context. Those who questioned the system faced resistance, not because they were wrong, but because they threatened momentum. Incentives rewarded continuation, not caution. Profits were immediate. Consequences were distant, and distance made denial easy. London's markets had become experts at delay. Delay of losses, delay of recognition, delay of accountability. Risk models kept working until they didn't. Stress tests passed until reality arrived. Confidence held until behavior changed under pressure. When conditions tightened, correlations rose. Assets meant to protect each other failed together. Liquidity vanished exactly when it was needed most. The system had not eliminated uncertainty. It had synchronized it. And synchronization is dangerous because when everything depends on stability, instability spreads faster than anyone expects. What looked like diversification revealed itself as concentration. What looked like protection revealed exposure. What looked like mastery revealed fragility. This was not a single failure. It was a structural one, built slowly, rewarded daily, ignored collectively. The more elegant the system became, the less room it left for error. And when the pressure finally peaked, there was nowhere for risk to go, except back to the center, back to the institutions that believed they had escaped it. That was the moment London learned a painful lesson. Risk cannot be erased, only displaced, and eventually reclaimed when the system reached its limit. It failed quietly at first, not with a single collapse, but with hesitation, a pause where confidence used to be. Prices stopped reflecting belief. They reflected doubt. Trade slowed. Trust thinned. Institutions that once absorbed uncertainty began transmitting it. What was designed to protect became a conduit. Risk returned faster than it had ever left. In that moment, the illusion shattered. The future had never been priced. It had been postponed. London's markets were forced to confront what they had avoided. Models do not change outcomes. They only describe expectations. And expectations fail under pressure. The most dangerous assumption was not mathematical. It was psychological. The belief that stability was permanent. Once that belief cracked, behavior shifted instantly. Liquidity became scarce. Promises lost weight. Structures designed for calm collapsed under fear. Yet the lesson was not destruction. It was exposure. Exposure how modern finance truly works. Risk does not disappear when it is measured. It does not vanish when it is divided. And it does not surrender when it is sold. It waits. It accumulates. And it returns when systems forget why they were built. Today, the same mechanisms still operate, more refined, more complex, more distant from consequence. But the principle remains unchanged. Markets are not machines of certainty. They are reflections of belief under uncertainty, understanding that truth does not prevent crises, but it changes how we recognize them forming. It reminds us that control is always conditional. London did not fail when it priced the unknown. It failed when it believed the unknown was conquered. When London